Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, good morning to everybody joining in. This is our first session for YouTube chats for Feralloy. I'll give first introduction to our guest. Saskia Schut has been an independent designer jewelry since April 1999. She set up her business in the Oxo Tower in London and relocated to the Design and Fashion District in the heart of Brussels in October 2009. Through her passionate conviction that the jewelry industry, through her passion conviction that the jewelry industry can operate responsibly, she became the first Firmine certified and also a member of the Ethical Metalsmiths in 2018. Saskia does not create collections, but works to order to the specification of her clients. She specializes on the one hand, in creating bespoke jewelry in Firmine gold, and on the other, remodeling and transforming customers' old gold. Anna, on the other side, Anna from the United States. Anna is the owner, designer, and maker of truss and ore jewelry based in Berkeley, California. And education director at Christina T. Miller Sustainable Jewelry Consulting. After graduating with Bachelor's of Fine Arts in 2011, Anna turned her focus to metalworking and started her jewelry company in 2014. Truss and Ore has been a Firmine licensed brand since early 2021, and is also the co-chair of Ethical Metalsmiths Action Coalition Volunteers. And she volunteers her time and expertise with the Jewelry Glossary Project. So, thank you very much. And my name is Andres Castellanos. Recently, I've been working with Firmine as a first authorized buyer since 2014. We were the third precious metal refinery in the world to have an authorized supplier. We've been working closely with Firmine to making Firmine products accessible throughout around the world. Recently, about a month ago, we had Saskia and Anna visit our refining company, and we had an amazing time together in which we shared our insights, got the opportunity to get into very specific details about the whole Firmine supply chain, learn about the challenges, about the jewelry manufacturers, the miners, the refiners. And I decided to make my first webinar in order to make this information public and that people could get to know how an entire how an entire supply chain works and all of the risk associated to it. So we'll start. The topic of our conversation today is about the different sources of gold, but I don't know if Saskia and Anna have something additional to say about this conversation and about today's presentation.
Sure. I would just add that as Andres mentioned, I work on my own jewelry as well as being education director and a consultant with Christina Miller Sustainable Jewelry Consulting. I'm kind of here today to share my more personal experience with my own jewelry brand and my own sourcing decisions and things I've learned along the way over the past few years.
Perfect. So we're going to start a little bit with a little bit of context about the different sources of gold. Primarily here, we'll start with the mining sources and then we'll go to the other refining sources. One of the primary sources of gold is LME, so it's large mining enterprises. These sources of gold are from the primarily gold producers in the world, Newmont Mining, and other very big corporations that do these operations. For these operations, it's very important to determine the size of minerals that are being moved. Large mining operations usually go over 500,000 tons of minerals removed per year. They do have a bigger environmental impact. Water consumption is very high. Although they operate in a regulated manner in which the environmental impact and social impact is mitigated through taxes and through proper water treatment plants and proper wages and something. This large and medium scale operations do have some risks. Risk associated are environmental and social risk related to this. Since they are very big operations, as I've said, the amount of earth that is moved is considerably higher than any ASM source. This causes a bigger environmental impact. Socially, there's a lot the communities that the people are involved. There's a lot of people moving into the community, altering the social conditions, the environmental conditions. I'll give you some examples. Traditional activities such as fishing, planting food or other things accustomed for the mining region or for the region that they live are altered. Usually these people that used to fish now go into security, and traditions and communities are altered. What we expect of this alteration is to have some positive impacts, or that could ensure the social development. In some mining, such large mining communities, this is permitted, and sometimes it's not so clear. What these large corporations come in as large scale mining, they try to do this in the shortest amount of time possible from a business perspective. So culturally, there's a lot of people that are coming to. They change traditions. Sometimes bars open, prostitution comes into these communities. The change of culture, a lot of profound changes take by around these mining communities. So these are some of the risks associated with large scale. Usually, large scale mining is used for investment purposes. Some is introduced to jewelry, some is introduced to electronic manufacturing, and yes, this is basically in a very fast way. What are the risks entailed for this? So Saskia and Anna, what are your opinions about large-scale mining operations? Have you had any experience with this type of mineral from the jewelry perspective in Europe, or from the jewelry manufacturing perspective in the United States? What do you think?
Go ahead, Saskia.
Well, I don't have much experience with LSM, unfortunately. I know that I worked a lot with LSM Gold before I became a fair miner certified, fair mine certified. But I recently found out that large scale mining is actually approximately 80% of the gold production, whereas ASM is about 20% of the gold production worldwide. So yeah, they have an actual huge impact on our gold mining. So I think they should be taken under the loop a bit more, scrutinized a bit more. We do know that with small scale mining, it's a lot more pollution. And that's why we're trying to, with Fair Mind, that's why we're trying to clean up and be environmentally as much conscious as we can, and really work towards a better solution. I also know that in large-scale mining, there are far less people working in large-scale mining, and there are far more people who are working in ASM, in small-scale mining. So the large-scale mines, if there are less people working in it, but they're large-scale, as in huge sites, then obviously a lot of it is machine operated. A lot of manpower is no longer needed because it's all machine operated. But that's kind of what I see as a conclusion for myself. But I don't know much else about large scale mining.
Yeah, I think Saskia brings up a really important point there. And I would even expand on it to say that percentage basically flips while LSM produces about 80% of all the gold. ASM employs the vast majority of all people who work in gold mining. And Andres, you mentioned the really large environmental impacts. And as Saskia mentioned, without making it a conscious choice when I first started out making jewelry, I'm certain I was buying large scale mined gold because I wasn't looking into the source, or I was buying, what was termed recycled. So that's kind of the only personal experience. It wasn't like a conscious decision to do so. It's just that when you're not looking specifically for traceable artisanally mined gold, you end up purchasing large scale mined gold because it's the vast majority of the production. And when it comes to the large environmental impact, I would say my recent personal experience has been that in California, folks are familiar with the gold rush that happened a long time ago. But the laws in the United States are such that it's really easy to stake claims on public lands for companies if their purpose is to mine that land. So public lands that are supposed to be available to everybody, the US law from 1892 allows for companies to come in and stake a claim because they want to mine it. So the example I wanted to give was that we were working, I was connected with an organization recently here who was working to try to stop a project that was trying to move forward in the California desert in Southern California. And the number that really stuck in my mind was that this operation, if it goes through, would use 200 million gallons of water per year in the desert of California. So I think that's just a really good example of that big impact that you were speaking to.
Yeah. And it's the purpose here is just talking about it. Like once, if you're very superficial about the matter, well, you're going to source any type of gold. But once you get granular, once you get into the details, you start analyzing and seeing the entire supply chain. It's not about, hey, this is the best. No, it's about having the appropriate information that it's well known upon the community that we're at, so that people could take great decisions. My personal experience, I've been to a couple of big mines. One that really left me like the impact, and I love contrast because contrasts are very important. I went to Montana, to Butte, Montana, at Montana Tech. I took an assay course, and they took us to visit a platinum mine. And that was the first time I saw a complete mountain cut in half. So it didn't feel right. It didn't seem right. And as Saskia said, it's with the minimum amount of people. Like everything was really highly technological. Even the smelting process and the whole processing of it was really highly technological. And there's a ratio. This is a very important ratio. It's the amount of people used to process tons of minerals. So with regards to artisanal and small scale mining, and in comparison to large and medium mining enterprises, the tons of earth moved with regards to people are considerably smaller. So while ASM uses way much more people to move 10 tons, 20 tons of ore, these people are using, the companies are using a way much limited resource. So that's information to keep into account. As Anna said, gallons of water used, another information to keep into account, in contrast to ASM or ASM gold mining. So yeah, so this is important information for sourcing practices and for the activities that we're going to develop. If sustainability matters or your claims matters, and if you want to have impact or don't want to fall into misleading or false claims, there's information that you have. So what I've been seeing is that the free flow of information is coming, and people are eventually going to publish the mines that are coming out. One trend that I've been seeing is people are finally understanding how ASM is impacting people socially and environmentally, and great companies are taking great leadership in publishing their entire supply chain. So now what is very important is the mine, it's not the refinery that's important for the moment. Like the refinery loses its primary role, and it's handed over to the mines. So that's one trend that I've been seeing, and that's what should be happening. The refinery should not be the origin or should not be the focus point. It is the miners or the real origin that should be the focus point. So this is one of the main problems that's going on in the industry. Refiners are very secretive. Refiners under the excuse of confidentiality or legal, they cannot expand on their entire supply chains, leaving downstream purchasers with only a trust-based system. This is going to change, and this is changing. So this is something really looking forward for the next couple of years. And to clarify, not saying that large mining enterprises or medium are good, no, are bad, but at least we're going to have a lot of information, more information of the people participating in this communications. I see we have a question from Sabrina, but we'll finish this, Sabrina, and then we'll open up for discussions later on.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
No, you're
from what I kind of see is large-scale mining is quite solitary. They think about themselves and the product and the money that they earn from it. Whereas ASM, it's more involvement. The communities that live around it are supported, and because of the fact that there are so many more people employed in ASM, there's so much more community engagement. Whereas with LSM, they come from maybe the other side of the world. A company comes in, plonks down their machinery, to be crude to say, and just excavates the land and takes the profits. And so the community around doesn't really profit at all from large-scale mining, because it's very much a company that comes probably from outside of the country that it's in. It might be, I don't know, from one side of the world coming to the other side of the world going, I'm just going to, I found out that there's gold here and I'm going to mine it here. And so there's a lot less community involvement with large-scale mining. Is how it feels. I mean, this isn't gold, but from what I've heard from a few of the large-scale diamond mines, it also feels, it's that same thing. It's a company with a lot of capital coming into a space, taking over a rural community, and they're not profiting with the company. They just they're living next to it. They're not involved in any of it. And I think with ASM, it is very much a community involvement. It is very much local people. They're all working in and around the mines, because it is rural mining from the rural people who live in the area and the communities around. So it feels very different that way.
It is, and it feels like that, Saskia. We do here in Colombia, we have plenty of experience with that. I'll give you some examples from the mines that you've had a close encounter with. They have two decisions. Once they get the mining concession permits, they could go ask international investors and with international knowledge, international technology, and decide to have a more industrialized mining operations. For example, Ikira had the Ikira mine could have taken the decision to have international investors and have technology brought from abroad and technology know-how in order to do their mining processes in a very short time frame. They're very specialized. These companies, international companies, they come in, they already know what to do, and they do have very fast time frames, and they do what they do. Like it is the purpose of they do. But on the other hand, Ikira made a decision. They did not want any foreigners or large working populations that are not native to their community coming in. So they decided to make it in a more small-scale mining operation. They use the technology, but they're owners of the community. They set up an own cooperativa. So it's not a couple of owners, it's a cooperative of the community that involves farming, additionally to mining farming. So this is a very big contrast. Like if they were to be doing industrial mining, we would have seen highways, we would have been seeing huge industrial complex, and we would have seen a lot of people not local to their communities. Everything streamlined in order to rip down a mountain, in order to use the most amount of water, and with appropriate mitigation. It's not illegal. What they're doing, it's not illegal. But it is a different way of doing it, no? So that's where that's when we start seeing the differences of what is responsible and what is not. And then once you see the Ikira mine, once you start getting near the Ikira mine, it's in the middle of the forest. There's no highways to reach it. People are working with very rudimentary equipment, not even near to the other used in large-scale mining. So that's a decision. The decision is their processes will probably take 30 years instead of 10 years. They'll use the proper local labor, and they'll do it in a more sustainable way, in a more responsible way, within a time frame that they could do it. Their output is no bigger than 30 kilograms per year. So that's enough for them to provide fair wages to the community, in order to provide social development for their children, in order to get education, in order to go to the big cities and change their professions, but do it in a very responsible time frames, responsible sources, instead of having a huge change and profit-based industrial mining operation. So, and you've seen it, Anna, and Saskia, you've seen how small scale mining operations are. Could you give us some insights about your latest trip and about ASM experience with the risk entailed of this sourcing from these sources?
Yeah, happy to share. I also just wanted to add one quick point to what you both were just saying, because I generally and overall personally agree. To me, that the companies from mostly the global north coming in mostly in the global south, reaping the resources. I agree with that overall. But when speaking publicly about it, I always try to be careful to not overly generalize, because then there's an opportunity for our narrative and our story that we're telling to be dismissed by companies that can try to claim well, we follow this standard and we do things responsibly. The main issue I see is that there is just a lack of accountability, or there can be a lack of accountability, because for a responsible version of large-scale mining to happen, I think one of the few ways to show that is, for example, IRMA, the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. However, that is a voluntary standard. And so I think overall, I would just say that, there's a lack of accountability. And the thing that Andres, you touched on that I think is really important that IRMA does include is free, prior, and informed consent, right? So I think without that, there should not be any large scale mining, just like the community in Ikira decided that they didn't want that for their own community. So just wanted to highlight that. And overall, I would say that, you know, meeting the miners when we went to Colombia through the Fair Mine trip was a super moving experience. Just kind of being able to get to know them personally and see how their lives have been directly impacted through this program. You know, speaking to some of the miners who were either in agriculture before and weren't able to find any sort of stability for themselves or their family, or those who were working at different types of mines that weren't Fair Mine certified and maybe weren't even formalized mines at all, to see how they were able to, you know, see the differences in, like, the Fair Mine certified mine does this so much better, does it so much more responsibly, there's so much more benefit to the community. I want to go work for that mine instead. I think that was really telling. And overall, just I was totally blown away by what the Fair Mine Premium can accomplish in the communities. You know, when we heard from the Ikira miners, for example, of all the different uses that the premium was put towards, I felt like they just like kept going on, and I was like, there's more, there's more. Like they just kept naming things that they were able to help support their community on, you know, from buying plots of land just for preservation, buying a plot of land for to build homes for their miners, and social programs for the elderly and folks with disabilities in their community, fixing roads because they were the ones that were able to do it faster because the government wasn't coming in and fixing the roads for people in the community. And, you know, the list just kind of went on. And to me, it was so eye-opening that we as jewelers, I think, often get a little too stuck on the added cost. I've now come around to the idea that the Fair Mine Premium being included is what gold should actually cost. But I think some folks are still a little stuck on that higher price, higher cost. And just being able to see how, to us, it really isn't that big of a difference for jewelers to pay that little percentage more. And here and there in Colombia, it was able to accomplish just so much. So that was really impactful to me.
Yeah, and I'm just going to touch a little bit more on the extra cost thing. In the end, I have had this discussion before with other jewelers as well, and in the end, I just say it. You know, the extra cost, it's not an extra cost if you see that you know, the miners are actually benefiting from this as well, and it should be the price that is. It's the other gold that is too cheap, because you know, these miners are actually benefiting. They have social security, they've got you know, protective gear when they're working, health and safety, they've got dental insurance and medical insurance. They've even got a pension at the end of it all, which generally small scale miners who aren't fair mined, they don't have it. So it's an incredible thing to see. And in the end, you know, I've decided a few years ago to just go, the only two things that I do in my business are remodeling customers' gold jewelry, because that's a sentimental value. I don't regard that as recycling. That's a completely different ballgame. For me, it's got to do with sentimental motivation. And the other thing is I make bespoke jewelry for customers in fair mined ecological gold. And those are the only two things I offer, because I consciously chose no longer to use recycled gold for all the issues that it has, and for the wide, left open to interpretation specifications. And so it's also the conversation with jewelers is basically, if this is what you offer and you can corroborate and substantiate everything you have and say, you can back that up, people who are in that same mind frame as you will be there to buy your jewelry. They will come to you because that is also what is important to them. And it's also about education. It's not about cost. We shouldn't see it about cost. It's about education. And once people realize what is behind Fairmind and how it works and how it is beneficial at the beginning end of the spectrum, from, and also with the fact that it has such a short blockchain. There, you know, from mine to refinery to the jeweler, there's hardly any shorter that you can get in a blockchain. So, and the traceability of it all, and the fact that it's all monitored, and so it, all of this, I think the pricing is correct. It's the correct pricing. It's not expensive. It is the correct pricing because we all get to benefit from it. We all get to earn a living from what we're doing. The miners get to earn their living and work in safe environment. So does the refinery, and so do we as jewelers.
And yeah, those points are very important. I'll share you a little bit more information with regards this social contribution, because it's a social contribution. It's not a fee. It's not a Fairmind fee. It's not a Fairmind thing. It's a social contribution to the miners. So what we're gaining here, that's the importance of regulated ASM. Regulated ASM is the area of mining that's susceptible for the most improvement and the most social impact to permit on these people. These people work in remote areas, as have you seen Anna and Saskia, that you cannot reach. It's not easy to reach. And it's amazing how resourceful these communities are with resources brought in from developed countries. So the entire supply chain, it's amazing. It's like, for us, it's simply amazing. Like, for example, Saskia took a decision to make a jewelry from Fairmind Gold. Her social contribution, it's directly channeled to these remote communities through the refiner and introduced for making playgrounds, for making roads, for having some funds for building their properties, or for building, for farming. So it goes. I'll give you an example. Minimum wage here in Colombia is around $270. But what is included with those $270? This includes complete healthcare, pension funds, entertainment. There's something here called it's, I don't know in English how to say it, but Seguridad Social. It's like their own clubs, or they have access to discounts, or they have subsidized loans in order for their or for their entertainment, and this is added into this. So by choosing regulated ASM, we guarantee that these funds are channeled, and they're channeled through certified sources, and they're channeled through this community. So their social well-being, and with responsibility in the mining community. So everything is traced. Social impact is measured. That's where it most matters. With regards to the tons of material being, it's done in a responsible way. It doesn't go 500,000 tons, 1 billion tons per year. We're talking about 60,000 tons, 20,000 tons per year. So it is not a large scale, and the people have a sense of proprietorship with their areas and their community. They're not going to dump chemicals because it will affect their farming lands, and they're going to treat it with respect, and as you've seen with the people there. So social contributions do go a long way in impacting the lives of people here in Colombia in the most remote regions. So that is very important to highlight. And this is not oriented to corporations or to that channel the resources out of the country. This stays completely in the country. So that's why important certifications matter. That's why third-party auditing, that's what Fairmind does. They do review fair wages and that the conditions of the social safety nets are met in the entire mining ground. So this is very scarce. For example, unregulated ASM does have a lot of risks. It is perhaps one of the most contaminating sources of precious metals if done in an inappropriate way. Unregulated ASM could permit child labor, could permit mercury pollution, water pollution, social disturbances. This is why it's important to engage with with ASM, with regulated ASM, and especially pay this premium as an incentive for these ASM miners to be regulated with. So to be regulated and comply with the international environment, with local environmental laws and international standards. So the room for improvement is huge. Another topic of discussion that will be for further, because it could take a lot of time. Standards matter. The size of the mining enterprises do matter, and this specific topic needs to have a discussion fast, because there's a trend of companies that want to source ASM, but now due to technical definitions, they get out of the pencil, or out of the lack of standards or definition of what is small scale, medium, or large scale mining, they could decide that a large mining operation could be labeled as small. So this is a very important topic that needs to be discussed. This could soon become the new eco theater. Once recycled gold, everything it tends to happen. Companies will now tend to go to the ASM gold, but this is not defined. I'll give you some examples just to be brief, but this is something that will take more time. A large mining operation in Peru, by definition, is way much different than a large mining operation here in Colombia. So what is considered a small-scale mining operation here in Colombia is around 80,000 of rocks moved per year, 80,000 tons. For a small operation in Peru is about 120,000. So it is a big difference. Once you get to see in Peru some small-scale mining operations, they employ up to 1,000 people. They have highways, they have international investment, and it's all labeled as a small-scale mining operation. With curiosity, this small mining operation has an RJC, Responsible Jewelry Council certification for small mining and all of that. So definitions do matter. Definitions and technical definitions with regards to size do matter, and this is something that needs to be labeled fast. There's a lot of companies now claiming their own ASM gold and something, but there's no standard behind it. There's no standardized conditions or definitions. So somebody could use the definition of the Peruvian government and be labeling small mining operations as something huge. Like, for example, the OECD has this cutoff point in the amount of people working in the operation that is around 300 people. Peru government has it with the amount of tons of rock moved. Colombian legislation has it with the amount of tons moved. Ecuadorian regulations have the amount with the Ecuadorian moved. So it is extremely important to get this definition clear, and technical definitions with size. That would be in another conversation, but this is a topic that is very important. I think for this first half, we have covered completely the minings, the large scale, medium, and small scale mining operations, their importances and their risk. Now, I'll give a brief context about recycled gold with some information, and I would love to hear Saskia's and Anna's opinion from different parts of the world with regards to recycled gold. I basically sourced the data with regards to recycled gold from the latest reports from the London bullion market operations. And I've seen a growing trend of the use of recycled gold in the amounts these companies are processing. From the last year, they do have a 2-year delay from the time it's presented. So the 2023 report is from the year 2021. And what we've seen is that London bullion market refineries are processing around more than 55% of the entire supply. So what we're seeing right now is that the London bullion market companies are recycling companies. But one data point that doesn't add up is in contrast with the World Gold Council. The World Gold Council presents its yearly information, and the numbers just simply don't add up. These two institutions, well, information coming from the London bullion market is precise. It is real information, and the World Gold Council does have they're a respected authority and recognized data information. But what the World Gold Council is presenting is that around 75% of the global gold output comes from mines, and the remaining 25 comes from recycled gold. So what's happening with this information? A lot of the discussions right now, heated discussions, go to the definitions. I'll provide a brief context of how the recycled gold narrative has formed. As I've come to see, prior to 2010, well, there was no reporting standard whatsoever. The Dodd-Frank Act from the United States started this trend of having public companies report if they use critical minerals, and these critical minerals is included gold, and they required a reporting standard just to avoid minerals coming out from the DRC, from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yearly, public-based companies need to report this. I know standards are forming, laws are forming, but the origin or the source or the prime was set up as the refinery, not as the mining companies or the recycled gold sources that they were sourcing from. So the reporting standards state the refinery as the source, which is completely not appropriate, and this needs to change. I hope in the near future it does. Then after the 2010 law came out, the OECD set up the guidance to clarify it's not a law, it's a guidance only. They did a very decent job of establishing guidance for due diligence for mined material. So most of the United States government and the OECD organization will focus primarily on mined content, and did not think or did not foresee that what the companies were doing right now is recycling, or due to the regulations on mined gold, most of the companies veered off to recycle due to the loose definition. So recently the European Union established a law for responsible mineral sourcing and critical mineral sourcing, but it's completely superficial. Why is it superficial? It's all focused on mining content, and they try to make up Frankenstein, I don't know the proper name, but they try to adapt mineral regulation to recycled gold regulation, and they're completely different. You cannot apply the mining logic or mining traceability because they do entail really difficult, different problematics, and you cannot mix them or try to make a same standard or a same due diligence guidance with regards to recycled gold. So what we've seen is really good for regards to tracing minerals back to the mines. It's really well established, but tracing recycled gold has become extremely problematic. They're trying to give the perception that recycled gold is traceable while it's not. So this is a problem that we're going right now. Lack of appropriate definitions. How many definitions are there in recycled gold? There are countless definitions. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. The first one is high-grade gold from used jewelry. According to the World Gold Council, 90% of recycled gold comes from used jewelry. Okay, that's interesting data. Then we're starting to see you labeling of recycled gold, like of waste. For example, a jewelry manufacturing company that has a casting tree or has high grade excesses, they're being labeled as waste, and it's being fabricated into recycled gold. We're beginning to see another term for this is grandfather gold, that is investment gold prior to 2012 that really does not have any origin, being labeled as recycled gold. We've seen some curious propositions, even from the Responsible Jewelry Council, to include recently mined gold from not direct mining operations, but let's example a copper company that is doing mining has some gold attached to it, and they are trying to claim this gold as recycled gold. So this is the definition practically they're endless. London bullion market, practically anything that does not come from a mine is recycled gold. So one very important job that the Precious Metal Impact Forum is leading up in Europe is setting appropriate definitions. Appropriate definitions are absolutely needed in order to create a roadmap for carbon offsetting claims, and in order to get a clear idea of what recycled gold is and what recycled gold is not. For example, there's a lot of criminal activity involved in this recycled gold chains. Gold has a particular properties that could be smelted. Traceability, transformability could be done in a very easy way. Refining gold today costs around 0.03 cents per gram. So it's extremely cost efficient to refine gold and erase any traceability. In order to manufacture what they called elephant gold, they could cast rudimentary pieces, big pieces of gold, and manufacture recycled gold to fit the criteria of the recycled gold definition. So recycled gold, in my opinion, it's a mess. No traceability cannot be guaranteed. I believe it's something that is going to implode in the next couple of years or probably months. And I don't know, Saskia and Anna, what are your opinions of this type of source of gold?
Whew. That's a lot. I think that you really touched on so many of the important points, the lack of consensus on definitions between all the various standards of what constitutes recycled. At the same time, redefining what origin means, because it's more convenient for some of these standards to say that the refiner is the origin. And what I know is that we can't know the impacts of that gold sourcing unless we know the actual origin, which means the mine. So that's important to touch on. And at the same time, when we were still talking about ASM, you did mention some of the really big issues that come along with unregulated or informal or illegal or sometimes even illicit ASM gold. Mercury pollution is really huge, especially right now in the Amazon. Not only deforestation, but mercury pollution. We're seeing the impacts like in the future generations now from the past 20 years of mercury pollution there through mining. Why is that important to touch on again? In this recycled conversation, we know that gold is entering the market. It is being mined and being sold through various channels, but it does eventually lead to the mainstream gold market. And so what conclusion can we draw from that is that, as you mentioned, for example, with elephant gold or even just, forged paperwork that makes it look legit by the time it reaches the refiner, that can then very easily be labeled as recycled gold. So yeah, I think that's the important connection to draw.
Yeah, I would agree with Anna on that one. It's quite an open definition from all the definitions that you have. I've heard discussions on the European side where they want to pull open that definition even more on recycled gold, what it is. Whereas jewelers like you and me, Anna, I'm sure you would agree, we wanting to narrow the definition of recycled gold and really specify what recycled gold actually is. I mean, for me personally, what I would define as recycled gold is gold that has already been implemented and made into fragments or pieces or something, objects that have been used, like in the IT, in the medical industries, in the dental industries, in the jewelry industries, that have already been components or jewelry pieces or and used, like, and then reclaimed because they've been broken, they're no longer they're in machinery which is obsolete, like an old mobile phone that is no longer being used. Those things for me is then the gold that comes out of that is then recycled gold and nothing else. I mean, under the LBMA, you even have, a bank buying a piece of an ingot or a bar from a refinery. It sits in a bank for a day or 100 years, and then it sells it to a private client. And then it's classed as recycled gold because it's changed hands. So it's secondhand gold. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And that is not recycled gold. That should not come under the recycled gold definition. I mean, yes, there is space. Of course, recycling gold and reusing gold can be done because it's there. We have 5 Olympic swimming pools worldwide, which we can fill with all the gold which has already been mined. But this includes jewelry, this includes the banks, this includes all the IT and dental and medical industries. This includes everything. And so, yes, there is space for recycling, but it shouldn't be labeled as the sustainable, durable, ecological way forward, because it's not, because of the fact that the definitions are so open and left to interpretation.
There's
Saskia, I would add quickly. Oh, sorry, Andres. Just real
No,
quick
no.
on your point about the amount of gold that's above ground already. I do often hear people use that as, kind of a way to demonstrate that we don't need to mine any more gold. We shouldn't be
I wasn't saying
buying any. I know. I just wanted to expand on your point.
Okay.
Sometimes people do use that argument, right? That's why we don't need any newly mined gold at all. But what they are not considering, if they are making that argument, so if you hear that out in the world, keep in mind that gold is not freely available for us to use. It is all owned by somebody. It is owned by a bank or an institution or an individual, and therefore it is not a reliable, dependable, steady supply for us to be able to tap into. And acting as if it is what contributes to that demand for recycled going up, and then the really creative loopholes that happen to try to basically create recycled gold out of nowhere to meet that demand. So
yeah, no, that's why I listed what has the gold, the banks and the jewelry and the whole. So yeah, so I didn't explain that well, so thank you for elaborating.
Just adding to it, just one more little detail.
Exactly.
And what's a little bit disturbing is, first of all, if you're going to reprocess gold in small scale, such as Saskia is doing with emotional value of their clients, it's good. What we're talking about is it's scaling. What we're talking about here is companies that are processing thousands of tons of gold and claiming that it's from a recycled source, and they're controlling a narrative, fabricating practically a narrative that it's traceable, and probably the traceability is what's most important. I don't know, I don't understand how there's a disconnection from the downstream companies. I believe downstream companies are not being well informed about the risks or about the different types, because they're very quick to make such affirmations about the sources of their gold, or their marketing teams are very energetic about a recycled gold, and I don't think they fully comprehend what recycled gold, what the current definition of recycled gold is, and what it's hiding behind. It will be a great challenge to see if these refining companies and downstream companies would publish the images of the pawn shops or cash for gold shops that this gold was sourced from. It will be, yeah, so traceability is fundamental. Communication is definitely being lost. Communication is being lost, and the communication needs to be established in order for these to happen. Saskia, I wanted to ask, I read an article in the past about, if you could provide us further context, about a jewelry manufacturer in Germany, and why doesn't she buy recycled gold? This article, I remember, caught my attention because it has a historical connotation and some experiences that probably us in new generations don't have.
Yeah, it was an article I wrote for the Source blog for Ethical Metalsmiths last May. And basically, it was a discussion I had with Fairmind Connect. So it was all the Fairmind jewelers the day before in Orgenta. We all meet up and we all have a workshop which lasts for a day. And we were discussing also the topic of Fairmind versus recycled, what we use, why yes or why no. And one of the German jewelers that was in my group, she said, in Germany, there are a handful of jewelers who don't, she didn't give me any specifics. I don't know how many, or if it's a general consensus or if it's just a few. But it was definitely food for thought, and it put things into perspective. They don't, or she doesn't use recycled gold at all, because of the fact that based in Germany, a lot of the recycled gold, it's not traceable, and there is a large possibility that it came from the Jewish Holocaust during the Second World War. And if you think about it, Germany was actually broke in 1939 because Hitler had used up all the gold reserves to buy weapons for the Second World War. But during 1940 and 1944, Switzerland bought, if I remember correctly, it was 17 billion Swiss francs of German gold. So where does that gold come from? It comes from the Holocaust. It comes from the stolen artifacts and jewelry. It comes from the gold bank reserves from the captured countries that Germany impounded. So it is, yeah, it is very strong possibility that a lot of the recycled gold can, or part of the recycled gold comes from those origins. If you think about it's only been 80 years. So yes, and I don't even have to go that far back, because basically I've already experienced a few break-ins in my career of 25 years. And I'm sure that my gold has disappeared, my jewelry collections disappeared into the recycling. And so, yeah, I don't even have to go that far back into history to know that my jewelry has probably been sold off to pawn shops or melted down and sold into the scrap industry for in refineries that don't ask for. I know that the refineries do ask for identification and things like that, but you know, it's already been melted down. If the it doesn't need to go that far back into history. It's any jeweler that has lost stock through break-ins knows that it's going to disappear into the recycled gold because they want the money for it. They'll find the pawn shops that don't take IDs or that don't ask for personal identification, and they'll just buy the stock and sell it through the refineries. So, yeah.
Oh, sounds good. No, thank you for that insight. From us in Latin America, well, we don't have the access to that historical, well, stories and especially related to gold. The data is very important, and information of how, well, German gold was translated into Switzerland. That is definitely some food for thought. And now that it could be labeled as recycled, well, that's some of the things that need to be communicated into the whole community, into the worldwide community, because we're no longer restricted to certain geographical points. Now we're interconnected. It's really easy to export through the FedEx trade network. And I'll give you a personal thing. We started our company in 2014, and we started asking local jurors what type of gold they wanted to source. And here in Colombia, it's a taboo. Like, no recycle. You don't just even name it. They say it is gold from pawn shops. It is gold from, well, we don't want to source that gold because it is stolen items. Pawn shops are located in the most depressed part of the cities. Crime spots are being held there, and they're not known for their traceability. They're not well known for their anti-money laundering standards, for documenting traceability, or for robust management systems. And I don't know where translation gets lost. I don't know. This is then sold into international markets, and then it's labeled as recycled. And there's a lot of communication that needs to take place with regards. And with regards to definitions, it is very important that definitions become every time more clear, and standards need to step up. Standards that guarantee traceability really need to guarantee traceability. Leading standard right now, as I've said it and I repeat it a lot on my LinkedIn, they spend more time in giving the perception of traceability than actually establishing traceability. Leading standards right now only audit the refinery. They don't, and they only identify the direct customer through their KYC. So if you check their standards, you're going to see a robust standard only to the refinery, and then they'll identify the first their customer, but from beyond that point, it is untraceable. No traceability. How people or companies are making claims around large-scale sources of recycled, it is completely irresponsible. Their claims fabricated. They're fabricated claims if real traceability cannot be guaranteed. And to be fair, traceability to be fair, because the mining origin could not be determined, traceability starts at the pawn shops. And as you get farther away the supply chain, refinery, you're going to see a very beautiful building full with complete legal teams and others. Legal team. Well, Anna has to leave. Sorry. Yeah, we've already passed the hour. Sorry. We'll wrap up. In 5 minutes. So, yeah, for traceability purposes, institutions need to get up to the international standards and offer real traceability, and at least change definitions. Anna, thank you very much for your valuable time. And
thank you. I wish I could stay and talk to you guys all day.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we've extended a little bit more, but thank you for your
No, that's
valuable
not a
time
problem. Yeah.
and for your insights. And we'll be talking in the near
Yes,
future.
sounds
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye, Anna.
Yeah. And yeah, as I continue with this, we do need to get up certification standards, do need to offer complete traceability in order to provide good claims. And well, yeah, I'll close up this meeting. Definitely leave more topics to further discussions. I would like to thank everybody for their assistance. And Saskia, do you have any final comments or any final contributions?
Thank you for inviting me for the discussion. It's been really interesting, and it's been great talking to you and Anna.
Thank you very much for your assistance, and to everybody, have a great afternoon.
Bye.
And bye bye.